The night Lena Voss saved a killer's life, she destroyed her own. One whispered warning, one hidden badge, one choice that turned a ghost into a target. In the city's most dangerous restaurant, where power brokers and criminals dine in shadowed booths, a waitress who perfected invisibility sees what she shouldn't, a setup designed to end in blood. When she breaks her silence to warn the man marked for execution, everything she built through years of careful nothing collapses in seconds. Stay until the end to see how far one decision can drag you into the dark. Drop a comment with your city. Let's see how far this story travels. The Sapphire Room didn't advertise. It didn't need to. Tucked 3 stories below street level in the financial district, accessible only through an unmarked service entrance behind a shuttered seafood market. It catered to people who valued discretion the way other people valued oxygen. The kind of place where mayors sat 2 tables away from the men who owned them. Where federal prosecutors shared wine with the lawyers who'd bury their cases before morning. Where a single photograph could end careers, marriages, lives. Lena Voss had worked there for 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Long enough to perfect the specific type of invisibility the job required. Not the kind that came from hiding. Anyone could hide. This was the art of being present and utterly forgettable at the same time. Moving through the room like air. Hearing everything, remembering nothing. Seeing the world's ugliest truths and reflecting nothing back. She was good at it. Better than good. Until tonight, that skill had kept her alive. The evening started the way they all did. Julian, the floor manager, running through the reservations with the dead-eyed efficiency of a man who'd stopped being surprised by anything years ago. Lena stood with the other servers in the narrow prep corridor, her black uniform pressed sharp, hair pulled back tight enough to give her a headache she'd stopped noticing. Table 7, party of 6, Senator Milhouse, Julian said, not looking up from his tablet. Dietary restrictions in the file. Don't fuck it up. Table 12, the Russian group. They've requested Dmitri specifically for service. Dmitri, a broad-shouldered man with prison tattoos barely hidden under his sleeves, nodded once. And table 4, Julian continued, his voice dropping half a register. Private reservation. Name on the booking is Rivers. Party of 2. Lena, you're assigned. Something in his tone made her look up. Julian met her eyes for exactly 1 second, long enough to communicate what he couldn't say out loud. Be careful. Understood, Lena said. The Sapphire Room operated on unspoken rules. You learned them fast or you didn't last. Rule 1. The private booths in the back weren't just tables. They were theaters, stages where people performed elaborate dances of deception, negotiation, seduction, betrayal. Your job wasn't to serve food. It was to be part of the scenery while very important people played very dangerous games. Rule 2. You never ask questions. Not out loud, not even in your head. You observed, you served, you forgot. Rule 3. If Julian warned you, even wordlessly, you paid attention. Lena moved through her prep with automatic precision, checked her station, verified the wine selection for table 4, a 2009 Bordeaux, the kind that cost more than she made in a month. Set the single orchid centerpiece exactly 4 inches from the table's edge, adjusted the lighting to the requested low amber. Then she waited. The first guest arrived at 7:45. Lena clocked her the moment she stepped into the dining room. Hard not to. Mid-30s, dark hair swept into an artfully casual updo, wearing a burgundy dress that probably cost what Lena paid in rent for 6 months. Designer heels, subtle jewelry. The kind of woman who moved through expensive spaces like she owned the air inside them. Pretty, but not distractingly so. Confident, but not aggressive. Perfect. Too perfect. Lena felt something cold touch the base of her spine. The woman smiled at the hostess, warm, genuine, the kind of smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She said something Lena couldn't hear from across the room, and the hostess laughed. Natural, easy, like they were old friends, though Lena knew for a fact they'd never met. She's done this before, Lena thought. The hostess guided her to table 4. The woman settled into her seat with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in her own skin. She ordered a gin martini, dirty, and made a self-deprecating joke about needing the courage. The hostess laughed again. Lena watched from her station, her face neutral, her hands steady. The woman checked her phone twice. shifted her clutch, expensive leather, possibly Valentino, from her lap to the table, then back again. She was performing nerves. First date jitters. It was convincing, almost convincing, but Lena had spent 4 years watching people lie. You got good at spotting the tells. The woman's eyes moved wrong, too controlled, sweeping the room in a pattern that looked casual but wasn't. Cataloging exits, counting staff, measuring distances. Lena knew that look. She'd seen it before, on different faces. The prosecutor who came in last spring, pretending to celebrate his anniversary while his eyes tracked the mob accountant 3 tables over. The FBI agent who posed as a restaurant investor for 2 months, asking questions that sounded innocent until you replayed them later. This woman wasn't here for a date. At 7:58, the second guest arrived. Lena's hands went cold. Cale Draven moved through the sapphire room the way apex predators moved through tall grass, unhurried, economical, absolutely certain of his place in the food chain. 6'2", lean build, wearing a charcoal suit that fit too well to be off the rack. Dark hair swept back from a face that would have been handsome if it weren't so carefully blank. He didn't look around. Didn't need to. The room rearranged itself around him anyway. Conversations dipped in volume. People shifted in their seats. Senator Milhouse's entire table went quiet for 3 full seconds. Lena had never served Cale Draven before. He rarely came to the Sapphire Room, and when he did, he used the private rooms upstairs where even the staff had limited access. But she knew who he was. Everyone did. In a city full of dangerous men playing dangerous games, Cale Draven was the one they were afraid of. Not because he was loud, not because he made threats or displays of power, because he was the silence after the gunshot, the stillness before something fell. He reached table 4 and the woman stood, smile bright and nervous and perfectly calibrated. "Michael?" she said, using the alias from the reservation. "Sarah?" he replied. His voice was quiet, pleasant, completely empty. They shook hands. He pulled out her chair, old-fashioned manners, the kind that looked respectful and functioned as control. She sat. He sat across from her. And Lena's job began. She approached the table with her server's smile locked in place, the one that conveyed attentive professionalism without personality. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Lena. I'll be taking care of you both tonight. Can I start you with something to drink?" Cale looked at her for exactly 1 second. His eyes were dark gray, the color of winter sky before snow. They passed over her face, registered her existence, and dismissed her with the same autonomy you'd give a piece of furniture. "Scotch," he said. "Macallan 25, neat." "Of course." Lena turned to the woman. "And for you, miss?" "Oh, I already ordered," the woman said, gesturing to her half-finished martini. "But thank you." Her smile was warm, her eyes were calculating. Lena nodded and retreated. Behind the bar, Marcus was already pouring the scotch. He was 70, had worked at the Sapphire Room since before Lena was born, and could read a situation faster than a priest could spot sin. "That's Draven," he said quietly, not looking at her. "I know." Table 4's been flagged Private Plus, Julian's orders. No interruptions unless they signal. Private Plus meant more than privacy. It meant the table had been swept for devices that morning. It meant the security feeds in that section were on a loop. It meant whatever happened there, the Sapphire Room's official position would be that nothing happened at all. "Got it," Lena said. She delivered the scotch with perfect, forgettable efficiency, set it down without a sound, refilled the woman's water glass, and vanished back to her station. Then she watched. She couldn't help it. Watching was her job, technically, anticipating needs, reading body language, timing the approach for the next course. But this was different. This felt like watching a wire pulled taut, waiting to see if it would hold or snap. The woman, Sarah, though Lena would bet her last dollar that wasn't her real name, was good. She played the part beautifully. Laughed at Cale's dry observations. Asked questions that sounded personal but weren't. Touched her hair, her collarbone, deployed all the small physical cues of attraction with Olympic-level precision. Cale played along. He answered her questions with just enough detail to sound honest. He maintained eye contact. He even smiled twice, though the expression never reached his eyes. But Lena watched his hands. They never relaxed. Not once. He held his scotch glass with loose fingers, but the tendons in his wrist stayed tight. When he reached for his water, the movement was measured, controlled. No wasted motion, no unconscious gesture. He was coiled, ready. He knew. Lena felt her pulse kick up. He knows this is a setup. He came anyway. Why? Around them, the dining room hummed with its usual carefully orchestrated chaos. Dmitri served the Russian table with the grim efficiency of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Senator Milhouse's table erupted in too loud laughter. Someone dropped a fork in the kitchen, and the sound rang out like a gunshot. Lena's station phone buzzed. Julian's text was brief. "Table 4, order?" She glanced at the table. Neither of them had touched the menu. Sarah was in the middle of a story, something about a disastrous work conference in Denver, told with self-deprecating humor and perfectly timed pauses. Kyle was listening with the focused attention of a man identifying all the holes in her narrative. Lena texted back, "Not yet. Watching." She moved to refill wine glasses at table 7, keeping table 4 in her peripheral vision. That's when she saw it. The woman reached for her clutch, smooth, natural, the kind of movement people make 1,000 times a night. But the angle was wrong. The bag tipped forward slightly as she opened it, and for 1 second, maybe 2, the contents were visible. Lipstick, phone, compact, and a badge. Police badge. Federal maybe, the metal catching the low amber light before she closed the bag. Lena's hand froze halfway through pouring a Pinot Noir. Oh, fuck. She finished the pour on autopilot, her mind racing. This wasn't a date, it was an operation, which meant the woman wasn't alone. Lena's eyes swept the dining room with new focus. Table 9, the couple who'd been staring at each other in tense silence for 20 minutes. The man's jacket bulged slightly under his left arm. Shoulder holster. Table 14, businessman eating alone. He'd been nursing the same glass of wine for 45 minutes, and his eyes kept drifting to table 4. The sommelier who'd come on shift 20 minutes ago. The one Lena had never seen before. He moved wrong, too stiff, too aware. How many? She thought. How many people in this room are here to kill him? Because that's what this was. Not an arrest, not a sting, an execution. The Sapphire Room had rules, but they weren't the kind written down. They were the kind enforced with violence. You didn't bring cops into this place. You didn't bring operations. The people who owned this room had arrangements with the people who mattered. And those arrangements didn't include federal raids on their neutral ground, which meant this wasn't official. This was something else. Lena's hands were shaking. She set the wine bottle down carefully and retreated to her station, her mind working through scenarios. This is not your problem. You serve, you forget, you walk away. That was the smart play. The safe play? She looked at table 4. Kyle had just said something that made Sarah laugh, bright and genuine sounding. Her hand was on the table, inches from his. Close enough to look intimate. Close enough to draw a weapon. Kyle was going to die in the next 10 minutes. Maybe less. And Lena was going to watch it happen, because watching was her job. Because getting involved was suicide. Because she'd spent 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days building a life based on being invisible. And you didn't survive this world by playing hero. She picked up her order pad, walked toward table 4. You're just checking on them, that's all. Doing your job. She reached the table and Sarah looked up with that perfect smile. How are we doing? Lena asked. Ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes? I think we're ready, the woman said. She glanced at Kale. The lamb special sounds amazing. It's excellent tonight, Lena confirmed. She turned to Kyle. And for you, sir? He met her eyes. For the second time that night, he really looked at her. Not through her. At her. Something shifted in his expression, not much, barely anything. But Lena had spent years reading people who didn't want to be read. He saw her, saw the fear she was trying to hide, saw that she knew. The steak, he said slowly. Rare. Excellent choice. Lena's hand was steady as she wrote it down. And the lady will have the lamb. She should have walked away then. Rule 2. Never ask questions. Rule 3. If you see something, you didn't see it. She leaned down slightly, reaching for the woman's empty martini glass. And she whispered so quietly that even she barely heard it. She's police. Then she straightened, picked up the glass, and walked away. Every step felt like moving through concrete. You just signed your death warrant. You know that, right? She reached her station and set the glass down with exaggerated care, like if she focused on the small mechanical task, her hands wouldn't shake. Behind her, at table 4, nothing changed. The conversation continued. Sarah was still smiling. Cale was still listening, but his left hand, resting on the table, moved just slightly. His index finger tapped twice against the wood. Acknowledgement. Lena's phone buzzed. Julian, order for 4? She texted back the food order, her thumbs numb. Then she waited. Cale said something. Sarah laughed. She touched his hand, light, flirtatious. He stood up. Excuse me, he said. Restroom. Of course, she said, still smiling. He walked past Lena's station without looking at her, calm, unhurried. A man stepping away from dinner, nothing more. Lena counted to 30, then she followed. The restrooms were down a short corridor past the wine storage, far enough from the dining room for privacy. Expensive. Marble and gold fixtures and individual stalls like small rooms. Lena pushed through the door to the men's room. Kyle was washing his hands. He looked up as she entered and his expression didn't change, like he'd expected her. You have 10 seconds, he said quietly. Then someone notices we're both gone. Lena's mouth was dry. The woman. She's not alone. Table 9, the couple. Table 14, solo male. The new sommelier, maybe others. I know. You know? Her voice cracked. Then why? Because showing up was the test. If I ran, they'd know I was informed. Someone close to me is feeding them information. He dried his hands with mechanical precision. I needed to see how far they'd take it. They're going to kill you. They're going to try. He said it the way you'd comment on weather. Like death was an inconvenience, not a certainty. He turned to face her fully. Why did you warn me? It was a good question. Lena didn't have a good answer. I don't know, she said. People don't risk their lives for strangers without a reason. Maybe I'm stupid. Something that might have been amusement touched his eyes. No, you've been invisible here for years. That takes intelligence. He knew. Of course he knew. Men like Cale Draven made it their business to know everything. I need you to do something, he said. No. There's a phone in my jacket pocket, left inside. I'm going to leave it on my chair when I go back. In exactly 8 minutes, you're going to take it when you clear our appetizer plates. Absolutely not. In the phone is a message. You're going to step outside, use the staff entrance, not the kitchen, and you're going to hand the phone to the man in the black town car parked in the alley. I'll get fired. Or killed. Probably both. The man's name is Victor. Tell him the word bishop. He'll understand. Lena laughed, and it came out sharp and desperate. You're insane. You already made your choice when you warned me. His voice was gentle, almost kind. Walking away now doesn't undo it. They saw. They know you know. The cold that had been sitting at the base of Lena's spine spread through her entire body. He was right. The woman, Sarah, had seen Lena lean in, had seen her whisper. Maybe hadn't heard those words, but had seen the action. Lena was already compromised. 8 minutes, Kyle said again. The phone. Victor. Bishop. Then he walked past her, out of the restroom, back to the table where someone was planning to kill him. Lena stood in the marble bathroom, her reflection staring back at her in the gold-framed mirror. 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Gone. She went back to her station. Marcus was opening a bottle of wine for table 7. Julian was having a terse conversation with the kitchen manager. Dmitri was clearing plates with his usual grim efficiency. Everything was normal. Everything was wrong. At table 4, Kyle had returned. Sarah was mid-story, something about her sister's wedding. Kale's jacket hung on the back of his chair. Lena's hands moved automatically through her tasks, refilling water, checking tables, smiling. 6 minutes. The couple at table 9 had stopped pretending to be in a relationship. They sat in silence now, their attention fully on table 4, even as they tried to make it look casual. 5 minutes. The sommelier moved past her station, Up close, Lena could see the slight bulge of body armor under his vest. 4 minutes. Lena picked up the appetizer plates from the warming station. Oysters for table 4, arranged on ice, with all the careful presentation the Sapphire Room was known for. 3 minutes. She walked to the table, set the plates down with steady hands. "Oysters," she said. "Please let me know if you need anything else." "Thank you," Sarah said, warm and genuine and lying with every breath. Lena reached for Kyle's jacket, a smooth motion, like she was straightening it. Her fingers found the phone in the inside pocket. She palmed it, the motion hidden by her body, and slipped it into her apron in the same movement. 2 minutes. She walked back toward the kitchen, her stride normal, unhurried. Then she veered left toward the staff corridor. Julian looked up. "Lena?" "Bathroom," she said over her shoulder, through the corridor, past the storage room. The staff entrance was a heavy steel door with a push bar, meant for deliveries and smoke breaks. Lena pushed through. The alley was dark and reeked of garbage and rain from earlier. A single streetlight threw weak yellow light across wet pavement. The Blacktown car sat 30 feet away, engine running. Lena's heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. She walked to the car. The rear window rolled down. The man inside was broad-shouldered, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen every terrible thing the world had to offer and stopped being surprised. "Victor?" Lena said. He nodded once. "Bishop." His expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Lena held out the phone. He took it, touched the screen, read whatever message Kyle had left. Then he looked at her with something that might have been respect. "Get back inside," he said. "When the shooting starts, stay down. When the—" He rolled up the window. Lena stood in the alley, cold rain starting to fall again, her entire life collapsing around her. When the shooting starts. She ran. Back through the staff entrance, down the corridor. Her mind was screaming at her to keep running, out the front, into the street, anywhere but here. But her feet carried her back to the dining room. She reached her station just as the lights went out. Not all of them. The Sapphire Room had backup generators, emergency protocols. But the main chandelier died, plunging the room into amber half-light. Confused murmurs rippled through the diners. Lena's eyes went to table 4. Cale was standing. So was Sarah. She had a gun. Not pointed at him yet. That would have been too obvious, too fast. But her hand was moving toward her clutch, and Lena could see the calculation in her eyes. How fast can I draw and fire before he reacts? The answer was, not fast enough. But she was going to try anyway. Everything slowed down. Lena saw the woman's fingers close on the weapon, saw Kyle's weight shift, preparing to move, saw the couple at table 9 stand up, their own weapons appearing. She saw the moment fracture into violence. And Lena, who had spent 4 years being invisible, who had built her entire survival on never being seen, made a choice. Lena's hand hit the service tray, and the crystal water pitcher went over. It shattered across the marble floor with a sound like a car crash, glass exploding in every direction. Water spread in a gleaming sheet across the polished stone. Every head in the room turned, including Sarah's. For 1 second, maybe less, her attention broke from Kyle. Her eyes snapped toward the noise, her hand freezing halfway to the clutch where her weapon waited. Kyle moved, not fast, not dramatically, just a smooth, economical shift of weight that put the table between them. His hand caught Sarah's wrist before her fingers reached the gun, and he pulled her forward hard enough that she stumbled. "Clumsy," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Are you all right?" He made it look like he was catching her, like she'd tripped. The couple at table 9 were already moving. The man's hand was inside his jacket when Dmitri stepped directly into his path, carrying a tray loaded with plates. "Excuse me, sir," Dmitri said in his heavy accent, blocking the man's line of sight to table 4. "Your entree." "We didn't order compliments of the house." Dmitri's voice was flat. He set the tray down with enough force to rattle the silverware. Lena was already on her knees, gathering broken glass with shaking hands. Marcus appeared beside her with a dustpan, moving faster than a 70-year-old man should be able to move. "Get up," he muttered. "Kitchen. Now." "I can't. Julian's calling it. This place is about to go sideways, and you need to not be here when it does." At table 4, Sarah had recovered her balance. She was smiling, but her eyes were cold and furious. "I'm fine," she said, pulling her arm free from Kael's grip. "Just startled." "The floor is slippery," Kael said. He was still standing, still positioned between her and easy access to her weapon. "Perhaps we should move to a different table." "I'm perfectly comfortable here." The tension between them was thick enough to choke on. Lena stood, glass cutting into her palm through the napkin she'd wrapped around it. She could feel blood seeping warm and wet against her skin. The sommelier who wasn't really a sommelier was walking toward table 4, his hand drifting toward his vest. The man from table 14 had pushed his chair back, ready to stand. Julian appeared at Lena's elbow, his face carved from stone. "Kitchen," he said quietly. "Diego's calling 911. Gas leak. We're evacuating in 2 minutes." "There's no gas leak." "There will be." His eyes were hard. "You broke the first rule, Lena. Whatever happens next, you're not here for it." He walked away before she could respond, already moving to the next table, his voice calm and professional as he announced the evacuation. Lena looked back at table 4. Kael was sitting down again, completely composed. Sarah was smoothing her dress, her smile bright and brittle. To anyone watching from across the room, they looked like a couple recovering from an embarrassing stumble. But Lena could see Sarah's free hand, hidden under the table. Could see the way her fingers were curled around something. She'd gotten to the gun. "All guests, if I could have your attention." Julian's voice cut through the low murmur of conversation. "We've detected a possible gas leak in the building. This is purely precautionary, but we need to ask everyone to exit through the main stairs. Please leave your belongings. We'll have everything secured and returned to you shortly." Confusion rippled through the room. Senator Milhouse was already standing, his security detail materializing from nowhere. The Russian table erupted in sharp, rapid conversation. The couple at table 9 didn't move. Neither did the man at table 14. Neither did Sarah and Kael. "Sir, ma'am, I need you to evacuate." Dmitri was at table 9, his bulk making it impossible for them to see table 4 without physically moving him aside. "We're finishing our meal," the woman said. "The building is being evacuated. Now." His tone left no room for argument. The man stood, his hand still inside his jacket. "Listen, friend." Dmitri smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Lena had ever seen on a human face. "I am not your friend," he said softly, "and you are leaving." Across the room, Julian was herding diners toward the exit with the kind of polite, inexorable pressure that moved crowds. Senator Milhouse and his people were already gone. The Russians were filing out, annoyed but compliant. Within 90 seconds, the dining room had emptied by half. The couple at table 9 finally moved, the man's eyes locked on Dmitri with the kind of look that promised future violence. They walked toward the exit, but slowly, their attention still fixed on table 4. Sarah and Kael hadn't moved. "I'm afraid I have to insist," Julian said, appearing at their table. "Building safety regulations." "Of course." Kael stood smoothly. "We understand." Sarah stood too, her clutch in her hand. The hand with the gun was still hidden under the small leather purse. They walked toward the exit together, Kael's hand light on Sarah's elbow in a gesture that looked gentlemanly and functioned as a grip. Lena watched them go, her heart hammering. Julian turned to her. "What are you still doing here?" Kitchen. Through the back. There's a car waiting in the alley." "What car?" "The one Victor sent. Move." He shoved her, physically pushed her toward the kitchen doors. Lena stumbled through, her mind reeling. The kitchen was chaos. Line cook shutting down burners, Diego yelling into his phone in rapid Spanish, someone dragging fire extinguishers from the storage closet. "Go!" Marcus was suddenly beside her again, steering her toward the back corridor. "Out! Now! Don't come back! My things are not worth your life. Move your ass, girl." He pushed her into the corridor. Lena ran, through the staff entrance, into the alley. The black town car was still there, rear door open. Victor was standing beside it, and he wasn't alone. 3 other men, all built like walls, all carrying weapons they weren't bothering to hide. "Get in," Victor said. You handed me that phone. You're involved now. Get in or stay here and explain to whoever comes through that door why you helped Kael Draven." Lena looked back at the steel door, She could hear shouting inside. Something crashed. She got in the car. Victor slid in beside her. The door slammed. The car was moving before she could think about arguing. "Where are we?" "Quiet!" The car turned sharply, tires squealing on wet pavement. They accelerated down the alley, away from the Sapphire Room. Lena twisted in her seat, looking through the rear window. The steel door burst open. Kael came through first, moving fast but controlled. Sarah was right behind him, and she'd stopped pretending. The gun was out, raised. She fired. The sound was muted by distance and the car windows, but Lena saw the muzzle flash. Kael was already moving, already diving left. The bullet sparked off the brick wall where his head had been. Then Victor's men were in the alley, weapons up, and the narrow space erupted into violence. "Down!" Victor shoved Lena's head below the window line as the car's rear windshield exploded. Glass rained across the back seat. The car swerved hard, throwing Lena against the door. She could hear bullets hitting metal. Rapid percussion, like hail on a tin roof. The driver didn't slow down. They hit the end of the alley doing 40, bounced over the curb into traffic, and accelerated through a red light. Horns blared. Someone screamed. The driver cut across 3 lanes with the casual indifference of someone who'd done this before. Lena pulled herself up, breathing hard. Behind them, the alley was already distant, dark. She couldn't see what was happening. "Is he?" she started. "He's fine." Victor was checking his phone, completely calm. "Kael doesn't die easy." "Those were cops, federal agents." "No." Victor looked at her with flat gray eyes. "Those were contractors. Very expensive ones." "What's the difference?" "Cops have rules. Contractors have budgets." The car took another hard turn. They were in the warehouse district now, the streets empty and dark. Rain hammered the roof. "Where are you taking me?" "Safe house. You'll wait there until Kael decides what to do with you." "I don't want anything to do with this. I just want to go home." Victor laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Your home is compromised. Your workplace is a crime scene. By tomorrow morning, your face will be on every federal database in the country. You don't have a home anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. Lena pressed her bleeding hand against her leg, feeling the sharp ache of glass cuts through the makeshift bandage. Everything was happening too fast. An hour ago, she'd been serving wine. Now she was in a car with armed men, running from what might have been federal agents or might have been hired killers, and somewhere behind them, a man she'd warned was either dead or killing. "I didn't sign up for this," she said quietly. "Yes, you did. The moment you opened your mouth at that table." The car pulled into an underground parking garage, spiraling down 3 levels into darkness. They stopped in a corner far from the entrance, next to a service elevator. "Out," Victor said. Lena's legs were shaking as she climbed from the car. The garage was cold, silent except for the drip of water from pipes overhead. The fluorescent lights flickered, throwing unstable shadows across concrete. One of Victor's men, young, Asian, with a scar across his jawline, opened the elevator with a key. They rode up in silence, stopped at the 4th floor. The hallway was generic corporate, beige carpet, white walls, numbered doors. Victor led her to 418 and unlocked it. The apartment inside was small, furnished with the kind of bland efficiency that screamed temporary. A couch that had never been sat in, a kitchen that had never been cooked in, windows that looked out over the warehouse district's empty streets. "Don't leave," Victor said. "Don't call anyone. Don't go near the windows. Someone will come for you." "When?" "When it's safe." He left. The door locked from the outside. Lena stood in the middle of the empty apartment, her hand bleeding, her uniform soaked with rain and blood and spilled wine. Then her knees gave out. She sat on the floor and tried to remember how to breathe. Time became strange. Minutes felt like hours. Lena found a first aid kit under the bathroom sink. Of course, there was a first aid kit. This was the kind of place that planned for bullet wounds, and picked glass from her palm with tweezers. The cuts weren't deep, but there were a lot of them. She wrapped her hand in gauze and sat on the couch. Her phone was still in her pocket. She pulled it out, stared at the dark screen. She could call someone. Should call someone. Who? Her parents were 3 states away, living their quiet retirement. She hadn't spoken to them in 6 months. Calling now would just drag them into whatever nightmare she'd stepped into. Friends? She didn't have many. The sapphire room consumed most of her time, and the rest she spent alone. There was Maria, another server, but Maria had her own problems. There was Tom, a line cook who'd asked her out twice. She'd said no both times. There was no one she could call who wouldn't be endangered by the association. Lena set the phone down. The apartment was too quiet. She could hear her own heartbeat, her own breathing. Could hear the buildings settling, the distant sound of traffic on wet streets. She stood and walked to the window, staying back far enough that she wouldn't be visible from outside. The warehouse district stretched out below, dark and empty. Somewhere in that darkness, Kyle Draven was either dead or dealing with the people who'd tried to kill him. Somewhere in that darkness, her old life was burning down. She'd been invisible for so long, safe in her insignificance. Now she was visible, and visibility was dangerous. The lock clicked. Lena spun, her hand instinctively reaching for something to use as a weapon. The lamp, the chair, anything. The door opened. Kyle Draven walked in. He was soaked with rain, his expensive suit ruined. There was blood on his collar, not his, Lena thought, and his knuckles were scraped raw, but he was alive, and he was alone. He looked at her standing there with a lamp raised like a club, and something like amusement touched his eyes. "You can put that down," he said. Lena set the lamp down. Her hands were shaking. Kyle closed the door, locked it, and walked past her to the kitchen. He opened the freezer, pulled out a bottle of vodka that hadn't been there when Lena looked, and poured 2 fingers into a glass. He drank it in one swallow, then he poured another and held it out to her. "You should sit down," he said. Lena didn't move. "Are they dead?" "Some of them." "The woman?" "Sarah Rodriguez, real name Emily Chen, freelance contractor, works mostly for private military companies. She's not dead, but she won't be walking right for a while." He gestured with the glass. "Sit, please." Lena sat, took the vodka, drank it. It burned going down, sharp and clean and grounding. Kyle poured himself another and sat in the chair across from her. Up close, Lena could see the strain around his eyes. He looked tired. Not scared, she wasn't sure he was capable of scared, but tired in a way that went bone deep. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "Giving me the extra second I needed. If you hadn't dropped that pitcher, Chen would have had her weapon clear before I could stop her. I'd be dead or close enough. You knew it was a setup. You could have not shown up. I told you why. I needed to see who was coordinating them." He swirled the vodka in his glass, watching the clear liquid catch the light. "I have 3 organizations that want me dead, 2 government agencies that want me in prison, and at least 1 person inside my own operation feeding information to all of them. Tonight was about forcing them to show their hand. Did it work? Partially. Chen's team was private sector. Well-funded, well-equipped. That narrows it down. The federal presence was lighter than I expected. 2 agents in the room, both keeping their distance. They wanted to watch Chen work, not interfere." "So everyone just wanted you dead?" "More or less," Lena laughed. It came out sharp and slightly hysterical. "And I helped you. What does that make me?" "Compromised." His voice was gentle. "I'm sorry about that." "Are you?" "No." He met her eyes. "I needed help. You provided it. I'm grateful, not sorry, but I'm sorry your life is going to change." "Is Victor right? Is my apartment compromised?" "By now, yes. Chen's team will have identified you within an hour. Your face, your address, your bank accounts, they're thorough." "So what do I do?" "You have 2 options." Kyle set his glass down. "Option 1, I provide you with new identification, enough money to start over somewhere far from here. New name, new city, new life. It'll take a few days to arrange, but it's doable. You disappear, and eventually they'll decide you're not worth chasing. And option 2, you work for me." Lena stared at him. "Doing what?" "What you did tonight. Watching. Listening. Being invisible." He leaned forward slightly. "You spent 4 years in the Sapphire Room seeing things you weren't supposed to see. You know how this world works. You know how to read people. Those are valuable skills. I'm a waitress. You're a survivor with exceptional situational awareness and the ability to make hard choices under pressure. That's rare. His voice was calm, factual. The waitress was just what you did for money. Lena's head was spinning. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose and protection. The people who came after me tonight won't stop looking for you. If you run, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. If you work for me, you'll have resources, support, a chance to push back. Against what? Federal agents? Professional killers? Against the people who think they can control this city through violence and intimidation. Against the systems that protect the powerful and grind down everyone else. Against... He stopped, smiled slightly. I'm not a good man, Lena. Don't mistake this for altruism. I run an organization that does illegal things. I hurt people who get in my way. But I operate by rules, and those rules matter. The people who came after me tonight don't have rules. They have budgets. Victor said the same thing. Victor's been with me for 20 years. He understands. Lena looked down at her bandaged hand, at the blood seeping through the white gauze. I don't know anything about this world. Not really. I just watched. Then I'll teach you. Why? Why go through the trouble? Kyle was quiet for a moment. Because you warned me when you didn't have to. Because you could have stayed invisible and let me die, and you chose not to. That kind of integrity is rare, useful, or stupid. Often the same thing. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the dark city. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. I won't pressure you. But understand, if you choose option 1, we say goodbye tonight. You'll be on your own. If you choose option 2, you're committing to something that will change everything about who you are. And if I choose option 1 and you're lying, if there's no new identity, no money, he turned to face her. Then I'm a liar, and you were right not to trust me. But I don't lie about business, Lena. Lying is inefficient. She believed him. She wasn't sure why, but she did. I need to think, she said. That's smart. Think carefully. He walked to the door. There's food in the refrigerator, clothes in the bedroom that should fit well enough. Victor will be outside. If you need anything, tell him. When do you need an answer? Sunrise. After that, I won't be able to protect you as easily. Things are going to move fast. He left. The apartment fell silent again. Lena sat on the couch, holding her bandaged hand, her mind racing through the last 2 hours. Through the moment she'd seen the badge, the moment she'd whispered the warning, the moment she'd handed Kyle's phone to Victor. Every choice she'd made had seemed inevitable at the time. Natural. The only option. Now she could see them for what they were, deliberate steps away from safety, away from invisibility, towards something she didn't have a name for yet. She stood and walked to the bedroom. The clothes were exactly her size. Dark pants, plain shirts, a jacket that looked expensive but not flashy. Practical. The kind of thing someone wore when they needed to move through different spaces without attracting attention. Someone had prepared this apartment for her specifically, which meant Kyle had planned for this possibility, had known she might end up here, might need these things. He'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. Lena changed out of her ruined uniform, the wine-stained fabric sticking to her skin. She showered, watched the water run red from the cuts on her hand, then pink, then clear. In the mirror, she looked like herself. Same face, same dark eyes, same ordinary features. But something was different. She looked visible. Lena dried off, dressed in the clothes that fit too well, and lay down on the bed. Sleep didn't come. Her mind kept replaying the moment Sarah's hand had moved toward the gun, the sound of the pitcher shattering, the muzzle flash in the alley, kept replaying Kale's question, "Why did you warn me?" She still didn't have a good answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe some choices were just instinct. A glimpse of something wrong, and your body moved before your brain caught up. You dropped the pitcher, you whispered the warning, you stepped into the fire because standing still felt worse. Outside, dawn was starting to break. Gray light filtered through the windows, turning the warehouse district from black to charcoal. Lena got up, walked to the window, looked out at the city she'd lived in for 6 years, the city where she'd been invisible, safe, small. She thought about option 1, new name, new city, new life. Running. Always looking over her shoulder, always wondering if they'd found her. She thought about option 2, working for a man who hurt people, learning to navigate a world she'd only ever observed from the margins, choosing to be visible in a place where visibility got you killed. Both options were terrible, but one of them was moving forward. The door opened. Victor stepped inside, his gray eyes assessing. "Well?" he said. Lena turned from the window. Her hand was still bleeding through the bandage. Her old life was already gone. The Sapphire Room would scrub her existence from their records. Her apartment would be cleaned out by professionals. In a week, it would be like she'd never existed. Unless she chose to exist. "Tell Kyle I'm in," she said. Victor nodded once. No surprise, no approval, just acknowledgement. "He's downstairs. Come on." Lena followed him into the hallway, into the elevator, down into the parking garage, where a different car was waiting. Kale was in the back seat, on his phone. He looked up as she slid in beside him. "You're sure?" he asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He smiled. It was the first genuine expression she'd seen on his face. "Good. We start now." The car pulled out into morning traffic, into the city waking up, into whatever came next. Lena didn't look back. The car headed east, away from the downtown core into neighborhoods Lena had never had reason to visit. Industrial zones gave way to converted lofts, then to streets lined with shuttered storefronts and check-cashing places, the kind of area where nobody looked too closely at their neighbors. Kyle was still on his phone, his voice low and clipped. "No, I want the full surveillance package. Every camera within 3 blocks of the Sapphire Room. I don't care what it costs, Marcus. Get it done." He ended the call and looked at Lena, really looked at her, the way he had in the restaurant bathroom when everything had been about to collapse. "You're going to have questions," he said. "A lot of them." "Ask." Lena's mind was still catching up to the decision she'd just made, to the fact that she was sitting in a car with a man people wanted dead, heading towards something she couldn't see clearly yet. "What happened after I left?" she asked. "In the alley. Chen's team had 4 shooters positioned outside. They were waiting for me to run. I didn't." He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. "Victor's people engaged them while I dealt with Chen. She's good. Better than I expected. But she made the mistake of thinking I'd panic." "Did anyone die?" "One of Chen's shooters. Heart attack, officially. The others scattered when the police showed up. Real police this time." Julian's gas leak story gave them enough confusion to work with. "And Julian? Marcus? The rest of the staff?" "Safe. The Sapphire Room has contingency plans for situations like this. By now, the security footage has been scrubbed, the reservation records altered. As far as any official investigation is concerned, you and I were never there." Lena absorbed that. "How often does this happen?" "Often enough that they have protocols." The car turned down a narrow street lined with brick warehouses, stopped in front of one that looked abandoned. Windows dark, loading dock chained shut, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. Victor opened Lena's door. She climbed out, her legs still unsteady. Up close, the warehouse looked even more derelict. Graffiti covered the lower walls. A padlock hung from the front door, rusted and ancient. Kale walked past the front entrance to a side door barely visible behind an industrial dumpster. He pressed his thumb to what looked like a patch of flaking paint. There was a soft click. The door opened onto a stairwell that descended into darkness. "Stay close," Victor said behind her. "Watch your step." They went down. The stairwell was concrete and steel, institutional. In that way, government buildings were institutional. Fluorescent lights flickered on as they descended, motion activated. 2 flights down, they reached another door. Heavy steel, the kind banks used for vaults. Kyle pressed his palm to a scanner. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The space beyond made Lena stop walking. It was massive, easily the size of the warehouse above, but underground. The ceiling was reinforced concrete, supported by steel pillars every 20 feet. Banks of computer equipment lined the walls, monitors displaying feeds from what looked like hundreds of cameras. Maps of the city covered one entire wall, dotted with colored pins and notes in handwriting too small to read from where Lena stood. A dozen people worked at various stations, some at computers, some at tables covered in documents, one cleaning a disassembled handgun with the focused attention of someone performing surgery. They all looked up when Kyle entered, then immediately went back to work. "Welcome to the operations center," Kyle said. Most of my organization doesn't know this place exists. The people who do are the ones I trust to keep me alive. A woman approached from one of the computer stations. Late 20s, wearing jeans and a faded band t-shirt, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She had the kind of face that looked young until you saw her eyes. "This is her?" the woman asked, looking at Lena with undisguised curiosity. "Lena Voss, this is Rachel Kim. She handles our intelligence operations." Rachel stuck out her hand. Lena shook it, still trying to process the scale of what she was seeing. "The waitress who dropped the pitcher," Rachel said. "Nice reflexes. Chen had you clocked at 3.2 seconds from weapon draw to firing position. You bought Kyle 4 seconds. That's impressive." "I didn't know what I was doing," Lena said honestly. "Even better. Means you've got good instincts." Rachel turned to Kale. "We've got the Sapphire Room footage analyzed. Chen's team had 7 people inside, not 4. 3 were kitchen staff, legitimate employees who got paid off. They were supposed to lock down the exits once Chen made her move." "Did they?" "No, someone triggered the fire suppression system early, flooded the kitchen, created enough chaos that the exits stayed open. I'm trying to figure out who." "Probably Diego," Lena said without thinking. Everyone looked at her. "The head chef," she explained. "He's worked there longer than anyone. If he saw what was happening, he'd know what to do." Rachel made a note on her tablet. "I'll check that. The gas leak story's holding so far, but it won't last. By tonight, Chen's employers will know the operation failed. They'll start looking for why." "Which means they'll be looking harder for Lena," Kale said. "What do we have on her apartment?" "Already swept. They got there fast. Chen must have flagged her during the initial approach." "Your place is clean for now," Rachel said to Lena. "But it won't stay that way. We pulled your essentials, clothes, documents, anything that looked personal. It's in storage." Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Strangers had been through her apartment, through her things. Her life had been sorted into categories: essential, non-essential, compromised. "Thank you," she managed. Rachel's expression softened slightly. "I know this is a lot. It gets easier." "Does it?" "No, but you get better at handling it." Kale led Lena through the operations center, pointing out different sections as they walked. The intelligence station where Rachel worked. The communications hub where a man with elaborate tattoos monitoring police scanners. A small armory behind a reinforced door. A medical station that looked better equipped than most emergency rooms. "We operate on 3 principles," Kale said. "Information, preparation, and controlled response. We gather intelligence on threats before they materialize. We prepare for multiple scenarios, and when we have to act, we do it with precision." "Controlled response," Lena repeated. "Like what happened in the alley." "That was messy. Not ideal, but necessary." Chen forced our hand. He stopped at a desk covered in surveillance photos. Lena recognized some of the faces, people she'd served at the Sapphire Room. "The goal is always to avoid direct confrontation. Violence is expensive and unpredictable. Better to know what's coming and move around it. But sometimes you can't move around it." "Sometimes," he agreed. "That's when people like Victor earn their pay." Victor, standing a few feet behind them, made a sound that might have been amusement. They reached a door at the far end of the operations center. Kael opened it onto a smaller room, an office, though calling it that felt inadequate. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto the main operations floor. A desk held 3 monitors and a keyboard. The walls were covered in whiteboards filled with diagrams that made Lena's head hurt to look at. "Sit," Kael said, gesturing to a chair. Lena sat. Her hand was throbbing now, the cuts burning under the bandage. Kael pulled a first aid kit from a drawer. Of course he had a first aid kit, and held out his hand. "Let me see." She hesitated, then unwrapped the gauze. The cuts looked worse than they felt, angry and red, some still seeping. Kael examined them with clinical efficiency. "You'll want stitches for this one. The rest should heal fine." He cleaned the wounds with antiseptic that stung enough to make Lena hiss. "Rachel can do the stitches. She's better at it than our actual medic. Is there anything she can't do?" "Sleep, apparently." He wrapped fresh gauze around her palm, his movements precise. "She's been awake for 30 hours running down Chen's background. Found some interesting connections." "Like what?" "Chen's worked for 3 different private military contractors in the last 2 years. All three have ties to a shell company called Meridian Solutions. Meridian's funding comes from a network of offshore accounts that trace back to... Paused. How much do you know about the city's power structure? I know rich people run things. I know the mayor's corrupt. I know the police commissioner takes money from people like you. People like me, Kyle repeated, something like amusement in his voice. Fair enough, but it's more complicated than that. The city has three major power centers. Political, that's Mayor Reeves and his administration. Corporate, that's the development companies and financial institutions that actually control the money. And what I'll call independent, my organization, the Volkov family, a few smaller operations. Criminal organizations. Organizations that operate outside legal frameworks, yes, but we maintain order in spaces where the law doesn't function. We provide services people need, we keep violence contained and predictable. Lena thought about the Sapphire Room, about Senator Milhouse dining 2 tables away from Russian mob figures, about prosecutors sharing wine with defense attorneys. So you're all working together, she said. We're all maintaining a balance. Sometimes that looks like cooperation, but the balance is always shifting. Someone's always trying to tip the scales their way. He finished wrapping her hand. Meridian Solutions is funded by corporate interests, specifically by a development consortium that wants to redevelop the waterfront district. My organization controls most of the property there. We're not interested in selling. So they're trying to kill you. They're trying to create enough chaos that I'll either sell or lose control to someone who will. Chen's operation tonight was just one piece. There have been others. Shipments intercepted, people in my organization approached with buyout offers, legal pressure on businesses I have interests in. Why not just sell? Cale looked at her with those winter gray eyes. Because if I sell, the people who live in that district get pushed out. Rents triple. Small businesses close. The neighborhood gets turned into luxury condos and corporate offices. I don't care about those people because I'm altruistic. I care because they're part of the ecosystem that keeps my operations running. Destroy that, and I lose infrastructure I can't replace. It was the most honest thing Lena had heard him say. Not pretending to be good, just explaining the math. So what do? She asked. I make it more expensive for them to keep trying than it would be to go somewhere else. I identify who's funding Meridian. I create problems for their other projects. I make them understand that coming after me has consequences. He leaned back in his chair. That's where you come in. Lena's throat was dry. Me? You spent 4 years watching powerful people interact. You know how to read a room, how to spot who has real power and who's just performing it, how to be present without being noticed. He pulled up something on one of his monitors, a photograph of a woman in her 50s, elegant and sharp-eyed. This is Catherine Brennan. She's on the board of directors for 3 companies in the development consortium. She also sits on the mayor's economic advisory council. Tomorrow night, she's hosting a fundraiser at her estate. Very exclusive, very private. And you want me to, what, serve drinks? I want you to work the event. The catering company is one I have a relationship with. They'll hire you, no questions asked. You'll move through the party exactly like you moved through the Sapphire Room. Invisible, observant. Looking for what? Anything that tells us who's really driving the Meridian operation. Brennan's a mid-level player, but she'll know who the top level is. People talk at events like this. They get comfortable. They forget the staff exists. Lena's mind was racing. I just decided to do this 30 minutes ago. I don't know what I'm doing. You know how to watch and listen. That's 90% of intelligence work. The other 10% is knowing what matters. We'll teach you that part. And if I see something, what then? You report it, we analyze it. We decide how to act. It sounded simple. It probably wasn't. What if someone recognizes me? They won't. You've been invisible for 4 years, remember? And we'll change your appearance enough that even if someone from the Sapphire Room attends, they won't make the connection. Kyle stood. Rachel will brief you on the details. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be long. He left the office. Lena sat there, staring at Catherine Brennan's photograph on the screen. A woman with power and money and connections. A woman who'd hired people to kill Kyle Draven. And Lena was going to serve her drinks. Rachel appeared in the doorway. Come on, let's get those stitches done. Then I'll show you where you'll be staying. The medical station was cleaner than most operating rooms Lena had been in. Rachel washed her hands with surgical precision and pulled on gloves. "This is going to hurt," she said, threading a curved needle. "Sorry." "It's fine."
Ma.
It was not fine. The needle-piercing skin was sharp and immediate, and Lena had to focus on breathing steadily while Rachel worked. "So," Rachel said conversationally, "how'd you end up at the Sapphire Room?" "Wanted a job that paid well and didn't ask questions." "Smart. How long before you figured out what kind of place it really was?" "First week, table 6, 2 men talking about a property development deal that involved making someone disappear. They ordered the salmon." Rachel laughed. "Yeah, that'll do it. You report it?" "To who? The police? Half of them were eating there, too." "Good instincts." Rachel tied off the first stitch, started the second. "For what it's worth, you made the right choice. Working for Kyle, I mean. He's demanding, and he's dangerous, but he's honest about what he is. That's rare." "How long have you worked for him?" 6 years. He pulled me out of a bad situation, gave me a job that used my skills. I was doing penetration testing for a cybersecurity firm. Got caught stealing client data for a side project. Should have gone to prison. Instead, Kyle offered me this." "Why?" "Because he needed someone good with computers, and I needed someone who wouldn't ask where I got my information." She finished the third stitch. "We all have our reasons for being here. Victor killed the men who murdered his daughter. Kale gave him purpose after. Marcus, you met Marcus at the Sapphire Room. Marcus was a cop until he realized the system he was protecting didn't work. Now he works for Kyle and feeds us information from inside the department. Everyone's running from something, or towards something, depends on how you look at it." Rachel tied off the final stitch and cleaned the wound again. "You're going to have scars, sorry about that." Lena looked at her bandaged hand. "I'll live." "Yeah, you will. That's the important part." Rachel led her through the operations center to another door Lena hadn't noticed before. It opened onto a hallway with numbered doors, dormitory-style rooms. "We keep quarters here for people who need to stay on site," Rachel explained. "You'll be in 12. It's small, but it's clean and it's secure. Bathrooms down the hall, kitchens on the lower level. Help yourself to whatever's there." She opened the door to room 12. The space was exactly as described: small, clean, secure. A bed, a desk, a chair, a narrow closet, no windows. A clock on the wall showed it was almost 8 in the morning. Lena had been awake for more than 24 hours. "Get some sleep," Rachel said. "I'll wake you around 4. We need to prep for tomorrow night." "Rachel?" "Yeah?" "How do you do it? Live like this, I mean. Always looking over your shoulder, never really safe." Rachel considered the question. "You redefine safe. It stops meaning comfortable or predictable. It starts meaning prepared, aware, in control of your choices, even when the choices are all bad." She smiled slightly. "You'll get used to it, or you won't, and you'll take Kyle's exit offer, but I don't think you're the type who runs." "What type am I?" "The type who drops the pitcher." She left, closing the door behind her. Lena sat on the bed, tested it. Firm mattress, clean sheets that smelled like industrial detergent. She lay down, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Her hand throbbed, her body ached. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying the last 12 hours on loop. She should be terrified. Should be regretting every choice that had led here. Instead, she felt something she couldn't quite name. Not excitement, exactly. Not peace. Maybe just clarity. For 4 years, she'd been a ghost, present but not participating, watching other people's lives unfold while hers stayed frozen in careful, invisible safety. Now she was visible, targeted, involved. And despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and the complete collapse of her normal life, some part of her felt more real than she had in years. Lena closed her eyes. Sleep came faster than she expected. She woke to Rachel shaking her shoulder. The clock showed 4:30. Lena had slept for 8 hours straight, dreamless and deep. "Come on," Rachel said. "We've got work to do." They went back to the operations center. It was fuller now, more people at the computer stations, more activity. Kyle was in his office with Victor and 2 other men Lena didn't recognize, all of them studying something on the monitors. Rachel led Lena to her station and pulled up files on her computer. "Catherine Brennan," she said, bringing up the photo Kael had shown earlier. 54, old money, new ambitions. She's been on the Development Consortium's board for 3 years. Before that, she sat on half a dozen nonprofit boards and did the society circuit. Widowed, no kids, lives alone in a house that costs more than most people make in a lifetime. What's her role in Meridian? That's what we need to find out. We know she's connected. We know she has influence. But we don't know if she's a decision maker or just a useful face. Rachel pulled up blueprints of a sprawling estate. Tomorrow's event is a fundraiser for the Arts Council. 200 guests, all vetted. Security will be tight, but not paranoid. These people feel safe in their own circles. Catering is being handled by Levine and Associates. You'll be hired as a server. Marcus already set it up. Just like that? Levine owes us. They won't ask questions. Rachel zoomed in on the blueprints. The main event is in the conservatory. That's this glass structure on the east side. Cocktails, speeches, silent auction. But the real conversations happen in the study. That's where Brennan takes people she trusts for private talks. How do I get in there? You don't. The study is off limits to staff, but there's a service corridor that runs behind it. Thin walls. If you position yourself right, you can hear through them. Lena studied the blueprints. What am I listening for specifically? Names, companies. Anything that connects Brennan to Meridian's funding structure. Anything that tells us who gave the order to take out Kael. Rachel pulled up another file. We've got a list of confirmed attendees. I need you to memorize the key players. For the next 3 hours, Lena studied faces and names. Developers, politicians, corporate executives, society fixtures. Rachel drilled her with photographs until Lena could identify them instantly. That's Marcus Chen, CEO of Pacific Development. That's Jennifer Costa, deputy mayor. That's Robert Hammond, owns half the commercial real estate downtown. That's on and on. A catalog of power. By 7, Lena's head was pounding. You're doing good, Rachel said. Better than I expected. Most people can't retain this much this fast. I'm used to remembering faces. Comes with the job. Former job. Right. Former job. The Sapphire Room was gone. That version of Lena was gone. Come on, Rachel said. Let's get you fed, then we'll work on your cover story. The kitchen on the lower level was industrial but well-stocked. Rachel made sandwiches while Lena sat at a metal table, trying not to think about how far underground they were. Your name tomorrow is Emma Dalton, Rachel said, putting a plate in front of Lena. You've worked for Levine for 6 months. Before that, you were in hospitality in Seattle. Keep it vague if anyone asks. Most people won't. And if someone recognizes me from the Sapphire Room, we're changing your hair, glasses, different makeup. You'll look similar enough that if someone saw you once, they'd think you're familiar, but not enough to place you. Kael appeared in the kitchen doorway. How's she doing? Fast learner, Rachel said. She'll be ready. He looked at Lena. Any questions? About 1,000, but I think the important one is, what do I do if something goes wrong? Define wrong. If I get caught listening where I shouldn't be, if someone recognizes me, if you get caught, you're a staff member who got lost looking for the bathroom. Apologize, act flustered, leave. If someone recognizes you, deny it. You look like a lot of people. If things escalate beyond that, Marcus will be on site as a guest. He'll intervene, but the goal is to avoid all of that by being exactly what you were at the Sapphire Room. Invisible. Except at the Sapphire Room, I knew the space. I knew the rhythms. This is completely new, which is why you're going to walk through it tomorrow afternoon. Levine's team does final setup at 3. You'll be there, learning the layout. By the time guests arrive at 7, you'll know that house like you know your own apartment. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to say this was too fast, too much, too dangerous, but she'd made her choice. Okay, she said. Good. Get some more rest. Tomorrow's going to test everything you've got. He left. Rachel finished her sandwich and stood. Come on, let's fix your hair. An hour later, Lena barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her dark hair had been cut shorter, styled differently. The glasses Rachel had given her were clear but changed the shape of her face. The makeup was subtle but transformative. She looked like Lena Voss's younger sister. Similar, but not the same. Perfect, Rachel said. Even Julian wouldn't place you, and he saw you every day for 4 years. Lena touched her hair, still getting used to the shorter length. What happens after tomorrow? Assuming I don't get caught. Depends on what you find. If we get solid intelligence, we move on it. If not, we try something else. This is a long game, Lena. One operation doesn't end it. How long have you been playing? The game against Meridian? 3 months? The bigger game? Rachel smiled without humor. 6 years and counting. It never really ends. The players change, the stakes shift, but the game keeps going. That's bleak. It's realistic, but you learn to find meaning in the small wins, in keeping people safe, in maintaining some kind of order in the chaos. She turned off the lights in the small bathroom they'd been using. Come on, you need sleep. Tomorrow you're going to need every bit of focus you've got. Lena went back to room 12, lay down in the dark, tried to quiet her mind. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into a house full of people who might have ordered Khalil's death. She'd serve them drinks and smile and be invisible while listening for information that could shift the balance of power in a city she'd never understood was at war with itself. She'd do it with a fake name and a new face and skills she wasn't sure she actually had. And if she failed, people would die, possibly including her. Lena pulled the blanket up, feeling the weight of her bandaged hand. Rachel's stitches pulled slightly when she moved. She'd have scars. Proof that she'd been here, that she'd made choices, that she'd stepped into the fire and survived, for now. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Morning came too early. Rachel knocked at 6, already dressed and moving with the efficient energy of someone who ran on coffee and adrenaline. Up, she said. We've got 3 hours before you need to be at the Brennan estate. Lena dragged herself out of bed, her body protesting. The cuts on her hand had stiffened overnight, and her neck ached from sleeping in an unfamiliar position. In the bathroom down the hall, she splashed cold water on her face and stared at the stranger in the mirror. The haircut still looked foreign. The glasses sitting on the sink edge made her look softer, younger, more forgettable. That was the point. She found Rachel in the operations center, already deep in conversation with a man Lena hadn't met yet. He was maybe 40, built like he'd spent serious time in a gym, wearing the kind of casual, expensive clothes that marked him as someone who moved in Brennan's circles. Lena, this is Marcus, Rachel said. Not the Marcus from the Sapphire Room. Marcus Chen. The CEO, Lena said, recognizing him from the photos she'd memorized. Pacific Development. Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Smart. Yeah, that's my day job. My night job is making sure Kyle doesn't get killed by people who think they run this city. And you're going to be at the fundraiser. As a legitimate guest. Catherine's been courting Pacific Development for a waterfront project. I've been stringing her along, gathering information. Tonight I'll be visible, social, exactly where I'm supposed to be. He looked at Rachel. You're sure she's ready? As ready as anyone can be with 2 days training. 2 days, Marcus repeated. Christ. When I started, Kyle gave me 3 months of prep before he let me anywhere near an active operation. She doesn't have 3 months. Besides, she's got the right background. She knows how to be staff. Marcus studied Lena with the assessing look of someone who made his living reading people. You scared? Terrified. Good. Scared keeps you sharp. Overconfident gets you caught. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph of Catherine Brennan's estate. I've been there 4 times in the last 2 months. Security's professional but not paranoid. They check credentials at the gate, scan for weapons, then mostly leave you alone once you're inside. Staff enters through the service entrance on the north side. You'll check in with the catering manager, woman named Diane, been working for Levine for 20 years. She's not one of ours, but she's practical. Don't give her a reason to look at you twice. What's my story if she asks about my experience? You worked private events in Seattle for 3 years, wanted a change of scene. Moved here 6 months ago. Keep it boring. People don't remember boring. Rachel handed Lena a tablet. These are the updated schematics. I marked the service corridors in red. The study is here. She pointed to a room on the 2nd floor. East Wing, Private. Brennan uses it for business conversations she doesn't want overheard. If she follows pattern, she'll take her key contacts up there around 9 after the speeches. How do I get close enough to hear without being obvious? There's a service bathroom adjacent to the study. You'll stage yourself there, arrange some supplies, look busy if anyone comes by. The wall between the bathroom and the study is original construction. Thin plaster over lath, sound carries. Marcus pulled up another photo. This is the conservatory where the main event happens. Glass walls, high ceiling, terrible acoustics. You won't hear anything useful in there. Focus on watching, see who talks to who pulls Brennan aside for private conversations, who looks uncomfortable. And if Brennan takes someone to the study while I'm positioned there, you listen, you remember, you report everything. Rachel's voice was flat, professional. Don't try to record anything. Security sweeps for electronic devices. Your memory is your only tool. Lena's throat was dry. What if I miss something important? What if I hear it but don't understand it? Then you tell us what you heard, word for word, and we figure out what it means. That's how intelligence works. You're the eyes and ears. We're the analysis. Kael appeared from his office, Victor trailing behind him. He looked like he'd been awake all night. Same clothes as yesterday, darker shadows under his eyes. Status? He asked Rachel. She's as ready as she's going to be. Marcus will be on site. I'll be monitoring from here. Victor's team will be positioned outside the estate perimeter in case extraction becomes necessary. It won't, Kael said, but he looked at Lena when he said it. You're going to walk in, do your job, and walk out, clean and simple. Nothing about this feels simple. It never does the first time. He gestured for her to follow him into his office. Victor and Marcus stayed behind. Kael closed the door and leaned against his desk. I'm putting you in a dangerous position. I want you to understand that. If something goes wrong, the best case scenario is you get fired and escorted off the property. Worst case, I end up like the people in Chen's alley. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it. I wouldn't send you if I didn't think you could handle it, but you need to know the stakes. Lena sat in the chair across from him, her bandaged hand resting in her lap. Why are you telling me this now? I already agreed. Because fear is useful if you control it. Ignore it and it makes you stupid. Let it control you and it makes you freeze. But if you acknowledge it, understand it, you can work with it. Is that what you do? Every day. He met her eyes. I'm afraid most of the time, Lena. I'm afraid someone close to me will betray me. I'm afraid I'll miss something crucial and people I care about will die. I'm afraid the systems I've built will collapse and everything I've worked for will burn. Fear is constant. The difference is I don't let it stop me from moving forward. It was the most human thing she'd heard him say. What if I fail? She asked quietly. Then we adjust. We find another approach. One operation doesn't define the outcome. This is a long game. Rachel said the same thing, because it's true. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the operations center. When I started building this organization, I thought control meant eliminating risk. It took me years to understand that risk is constant. Control means managing it, having contingencies, building teams of people who can adapt when plans fall apart. Is that what I am? A contingency? You're an asset who sees things other people miss. That makes you valuable. He turned back to her. Do the job tonight. Come back safe. Everything else we can work with. There was a knock. Victor opened the door. Car's ready. Lena stood, her legs steadier than she expected. Okay, let's do this. The drive to the Brennan estate took 40 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier. The safe house Victor had taken her to was comfortable. These houses were monuments, hedges tall enough to hide scandals, gates that cost more than cars. The catering van dropped Lena off at the service entrance at 2:50. She climbed out carrying the credentials Levine had provided, a laminated badge with her photo and the name Emma Dalton. The security guard at the service gate was young, bored, probably working his way through college. He scanned her badge, checked her face against the photo, waved her through without really looking at her. Invisible already. The service entrance led into an industrial kitchen that could have handled a restaurant. Stainless steel everything, commercial-grade appliances, prep stations that stretched for yards. Staff were already moving through practiced choreography, arranging platters, checking inventory, coordinating timing. Diane, the catering manager, was exactly what Marcus had described. 60, gray hair pulled back tight, wearing an expression that said she'd seen every kind of chaos and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Dalton?" she said, checking her tablet. "Yes, ma'am." "You're on the conservatory circuit, champagne and canapes. You've worked events this size before?" "Several in Seattle, corporate functions, private parties." "Good. Stay mobile, stay attentive, stay invisible. Guests at this level don't want to notice you exist. If someone asks you a question, answer politely and briefly. If someone gets handsy, tell me immediately. I don't care how much money they have." "Understood." Diane handed her a uniform, black dress, white apron, sensible shoes. "Change in the staff room, back through that door. Be ready to serve by 6:45. The staff room was crowded with other servers, all changing and preparing with the efficient silence of people who knew their job. Lena found an empty corner, changed quickly, adjusted her glasses. In the mirror mounted on the wall, Emma Dalton looked back at her. Professional. Forgettable. Perfect. She spent the next 3 hours learning the estate's geography. The conservatory was stunning, all glass and iron framework, filled with exotic plants and lit by chandeliers that probably cost more than Lena had made in her entire life. The main floor had a dozen rooms, each more elaborate than the last. The second floor was private, off-limits to guests except by invitation. The service corridors ran behind the walls like arteries, allowing staff to move without being seen. Lena walked them repeatedly, timing routes, memorizing turns. The bathroom adjacent to Brennan's study was exactly where Rachel had marked it. Small, elegant, clearly meant for guests, but currently stocked with cleaning supplies. The wall between the bathroom and study was thin. Lena could hear voices from the room next door, muffled but audible. Someone was already in there. She pressed her ear to the wall. "Mo told you this would take time." A woman's voice. Brennan, probably. "These things don't happen overnight. We're running out of time." A man's voice, sharp with frustration. "The waterfront properties need to move in the next quarter or the financing falls apart." "Then perhaps you should have planned better." "Don't patronize me, Catherine. We've invested too much to—" Footsteps in the corridor outside. Lena jerked away from the wall, grabbed a stack of towels, arranged them in the cabinet with exaggerated focus. A security guard walked past, didn't even glance at her. She waited until his footsteps faded, then went back to the wall. The voices were gone. The study was silent. Lena left the bathroom, her heart pounding. First piece of intelligence, Brennan was having tense conversations about the waterfront development. The timeline was tight. Financing was involved. Not much, but it was something. By 6:30, guests were arriving. Lena positioned herself in the conservatory with a tray of champagne flutes, watching the crowd filter in. She recognized faces from Rachel's briefings. Jennifer Costa, the deputy mayor, talking animatedly with the developer whose name Lena couldn't remember. Robert Hammond, holding court near the silent auction, surrounded by people who laughed too loud at his jokes. Marcus Chen arrived at 7, perfectly dressed, perfectly comfortable. He worked the room with practiced ease, shaking hands, making small talk. When he passed Lena's station, he took a champagne flute without looking at her. "Thank you," he said absently. "Of course, sir." Their eyes met for exactly half a second. His carried a question. "You okay?" Lena's carried the answer. So far. He moved on. Catherine Brennan made her entrance at 7:15, fashionably late to her own event. She wore a gown that probably cost more than a car, diamonds at her throat that caught the light like captured stars. People gravitated toward her automatically, pulled by the gravity of old money and older power. Lena watched her work the room. Brennan had the same skill Kyle had. The ability to make every person she spoke to feel like the most important person in the space. She touched arms, laughed at jokes, remembered names. Politicians did this. Criminals did this. People who needed other people to underestimate them. At 8, the speeches started. The Arts Council president droned on about community enrichment. The mayor made an appearance via video, offering platitudes about culture and investment. Brennan herself gave a brief talk about the importance of preserving beauty in an increasingly ugly world. The crowd applauded, checks were written, the auction bids climbed higher. Lena circulated with her tray, refilling glasses, being invisible. She was good at it. At 8:40, Brennan touched the elbow of a man Lena didn't recognize. tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that fit too well to be anything but custom. They spoke quietly for a moment, then Brennan gestured toward the stairs. Lena's pulse kicked up. She watched them climb to the second floor, disappearing down the corridor toward the study. She gave them 90 seconds, then slipped away from the conservatory. Through the service corridor, up the back stairs, down the hall to the bathroom adjacent to the study. The door was unlocked. Lena slipped inside, locked it behind her, pressed her ear to the wall. Can't keep stalling him forever. The man's voice was clearer now, educated, impatient. Draven's not going to sell, and every day we wait gives him time to consolidate. I'm aware of the timeline, Richard. Richard. Lena filed the name away. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're protecting him. I'm protecting our interests. If we move too aggressively and it blows back on us, we lose everything. The mayor's already nervous about the attention. The last thing we need is a federal investigation. The mayor's a coward. The mayor controls permits and zoning. We need him. Brennan's voice was cold. Chen's operation was supposed to be clean, quick. Instead, Draven's still alive and we've got bodies in alleys and restaurant evacuations making the news. Chen failed because someone warned him. We have a leak. Or Chen underestimated him. Draven's not some street-level dealer. He's been operating in this city for 15 years. He has resources we're still mapping, which is why we should have moved harder. Silence. Then Brennan spoke again, quieter. I didn't bring you up here to debate tactics, Richard. I brought you up here to tell you that the consortium is getting cold feet. 3 board members have already approached me about pulling their investment. They're spooked by the violence. Then we need to finish this. Take Draven out of the equation entirely. Show the board we can control the situation. With what? More contractors who fail? More bodies? That's not control. That's chaos. So what do you suggest? We go political. We have enough leverage with the city council to force a rezoning vote. Make the waterfront properties legally untenable for Draven's operations. He either sells or loses everything when we change the ground under his feet. That takes months. It takes 8 weeks, less if we expedite. And it's legal, clean, no more Chen situations. Richard made a sound of frustration. 8 weeks is too long. The financing is your problem, not mine. My job is to make this development happen without destroying all of our careers in the process. Your job is to keep your investors patient. Footsteps. They were moving toward the door. Lena jerked away from the wall, her mind racing. She grabbed cleaning supplies from under the sink, started arranging them on the counter. The study door opened, closed. Footsteps in the hall, moving away. Lena waited, counting to 30, then slipped out of the bathroom. The hallway was empty. She made her way back to the service corridor, back down to the conservatory. Her tray was where she'd left it, champagne slightly warm. She picked it up with hands that wanted to shake and didn't let them. Marcus was near the auction table, examining a painting. When Lena passed with her tray, he took another glass. Everything all right? He asked, quiet enough that only she could hear. Fine. Just needed a moment. He nodded, moved on. The rest of the night crawled by. Lena served drinks, cleared plates, smiled when required. Her mind kept replaying the conversation she'd overheard. Chen's operation. A leak. Political pressure instead of violence. 8 weeks. At 10:30, the event started winding down. Guests filtered out in clusters, calling for cars, making plans for late dinners. Brennan stood by the entrance, gracious in victory, thanking everyone for their generosity. Lena helped break down the serving stations, pack equipment, clean up the careful devastation of wealth on display. By midnight, the staff was dismissed. Lena changed back into her street clothes, returned her badge to Diane. You did good work tonight, Diane said, which felt like high praise from a woman who clearly didn't give compliments easily. I'll request you for future events. Thank you. Lena walked out through the service entrance into cold night air. The catering van was waiting, engine running. Victor was behind the wheel. Get in, he said. She climbed into the passenger seat. The van pulled away from the estate, merging into sparse late-night traffic. Well? Victor asked. I got something. Brennan was in the study with someone named Richard. They talked about Chen's failed operation, about a leak, about going political instead of violent. Richard who? I don't know. Silver hair, expensive suit, impatient. He seemed frustrated that Draven's still alive. Victor nodded, his expression unreadable. Rachel will want a full debrief. Everything you remember, word for word. They drove in silence for a while. Then Victor spoke again. You did good tonight. Kyle will be pleased. I was terrified the entire time. I know, but you did the job anyway. That's what matters. Back at the operations center, Rachel was waiting with a tablet and a recording device. Tell me everything, she said. Lena recounted the conversation, struggling to remember exact phrasing. Rachel didn't interrupt, just recorded and took notes. When Lena finished, Rachel played it back, had her clarify details, pressed for anything she might have forgotten. Richard, Rachel muttered, already typing. Silver hair? Impatient? Connected enough to have private conversations with Brennan about development financing that narrows it down to maybe 6 people. Cale emerged from his office. Let me hear it. Rachel played the recording of Lena's debrief. Cale listened without expression. When it ended, he looked at Lena. 8 weeks for rezoning. Political pressure instead of contractors. A leak they think tipped me off about Chen. He smiled slightly. This is good intelligence. Actionable. Who's Richard? Lena asked. Probably Richard Vance. He runs a venture capital firm that specializes in real estate development. He's been tied to 3 different waterfront projects in the last 5 years. If Brennan's working with him, the consortium backing Meridian is bigger than we thought. Rachel pulled up a photo. The silver-haired man from the study looked back at them. That's him, Lena confirmed. Richard Vance, Kyle said softly. Well, that changes things. How? Vance has connections in the state legislature. If he's pushing for rezoning, he's got the political weight to make it happen. We can't fight that with money. We need leverage. What kind of leverage? Kyle's smile was cold. The kind Vance doesn't want exposed. Rachel, start pulling his financials. I want to know every dollar he's moved in the last year. Victor, reach out to our contact in the controller's office. If Vance is financing the Meridian operation, there's a paper trail somewhere. He looked at Lena. You did exactly what I needed you to do. Get some rest. We'll debrief more thoroughly in the morning. Lena made her way back to room 12, her body heavy with exhaustion. She'd been awake for 18 hours, most of them running on adrenaline. She lay down on the narrow bed, still in her street clothes. She'd done it, walked into a room full of dangerous people, gathered intelligence, walked out clean. And nobody had even noticed she was there. The thought should have been satisfying. Instead, it felt empty. She'd been invisible her whole life, at the Sapphire Room, at the fundraiser tonight. It was her greatest skill and her deepest failure. But tonight, she'd been invisible with purpose. Invisible as a weapon, not as protection. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe that was enough. Sleep took her before she could decide. Lena woke to alarms blaring through the operations center. Not fire alarms. Something worse. The kind of mechanical shriek that meant someone had breached security. She bolted upright, her heart already hammering, and grabbed the shoes beside her bed. The hallway outside was chaos. People running toward stations, weapons being drawn, Rachel's voice cutting through the noise. Perimeter breach. North entrance. 3 vehicles. Victor, get everyone to defensive positions. Lena ran toward the main operations floor. Cale was already there, standing in front of the monitor wall, with the kind of terrible calm that made the panic around him look hysterical. How many? He asked. At least 12, Rachel said, fingers flying across her keyboard. Professional formation. They knew where to hit. On the monitors, Lena could see vehicles surrounding the warehouse above them. Men in tactical gear pouring out, moving with military precision toward the service entrance they'd used yesterday. Chen's people? Victor asked, checking the magazine in his handgun. No. Kyle's voice was flat. Look at the equipment. That's law enforcement gear. Federal, probably. They're not announcing themselves, Marcus said, appearing from one of the side rooms already armed. No badges visible, no raid protocols. This is off book. Which meant they weren't here to arrest anyone. They were here to erase problems. How'd they find us? Rachel demanded. Later, Kyle turned to Victor. Secure the servers, full wipe protocol. Marcus, get everyone non-essential into the escape tunnels. Rachel, I'm not leaving, she said. I wasn't going to ask you to. I need you on communications. Find out who sent them and why they're not following procedure. He looked at Lena. You need to go. Now. Where? The tunnels lead to 3 different exits across the district. Victor will show you. Take. An explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered, died, came back on emergency power. Red light washed everything in shades of blood. They're breaching the main entrance, someone shouted. Kale swore. They're moving faster than expected. Victor, get her out. Go. Victor grabbed Lena's arm, his grip hard enough to bruise. Move. What about? Not your problem. Move. He pulled her toward the back of the operations center, toward a door she'd never noticed before. It opened onto a narrow tunnel that sloped downward into darkness. Emergency lights marked the path every 10 feet, weak and flickering. Behind them, Lena heard gunfire. Not the sharp cracks from movies. Real gunfire was louder, flatter, the sound of violence without music. Victor shoved her into the tunnel. Run. Don't stop. The tunnel forks in half a mile. Take the left path. It exits in a condemned building near the old textile district. There's a car waiting, keys under the driver's seat. Get in, drive south, ditch the car in 20 minutes. What about you? I'm going back. That's suicide. That's my job. He pressed something into her hand. A phone, different from the one she'd had before. Rachel programmed it. Kael's number is the only one in there. Wait 6 hours, then call. He'll tell you where to go. If he's alive in 6 hours? Victor smiled. It was terrible. He's survived worse. Now go. He was gone before Lena could argue, running back toward the firefight. Lena stood in the tunnel entrance, her brain screaming contradictory instructions. Run. Go back. Hide. Fight. Help. More gunfire. Closer now. She ran. The tunnel was barely wide enough for one person, walls pressing close on either side. Water dripped from somewhere overhead, making the concrete slick. Lena's footsteps echoed wrong in the confined space, turning one person into many. She tried not to think about what was happening behind her. Tried not to picture Kael and Rachel and Victor fighting people with military-grade equipment in a confined underground space. Tried not to think about how everyone she'd met in the last 48 hours might be dead in the next 10 minutes. The tunnel forked exactly where Victor said it would. Lena went left, running harder now. Her lungs burned. The stitches in her hand pulled with every step, sending sharp pain up her arm. The tunnel began sloping upward. Lena could see gray light ahead, weak and rain-filtered. She emerged into a building that had died years ago, walls covered in graffiti, floor littered with broken glass and evidence of people who'd sheltered here and moved on. Rain came through holes in the roof, turning the floor into a maze of puddles. The car was where Victor said it would be, an old sedan, nondescript and dirty enough to be invisible. Lena found the keys, started the engine, pulled out into empty streets. 6 in the morning, the city was just waking up. Delivery trucks, early commuters, people who had normal jobs and normal lives. Lena drove south like Victor had instructed, her hands shaking on the wheel. 20 minutes. She abandoned the car in a grocery store parking lot, wiped down the surfaces she'd touched, and walked. The rain was getting heavier. Lena had no coat, no money except what was in her pocket from 2 days ago, no plan beyond walking until 6 hours had passed. She found a diner 3 blocks away, ordered coffee with the handful of bills she had left, sat in a booth by the window and watched the city wake up while her entire world burned down behind her. The phone Victor had given her sat on the table, silent, waiting. Lena stared at it and tried not to imagine all the reasons it might never ring. The 6 hours were the longest of her life. She nursed 3 cups of coffee, ordered toast she couldn't eat, watched the rain turn the streets into rivers. The diner filled and emptied twice. Nobody looked at her. She was invisible again. At noon exactly, she called the only number in the phone. It rang 4 times. Then, "You made it out." Kale's voice was rough, strained, but alive. Lena's throat closed. "Are you?" "Fine. We're fine, most of us." A pause. 3 casualties. The rest are secure." "Who?" "Later. Where are you?" Lena gave him the intersection. "Stay there. Someone will pick you up in 20 minutes. Black SUV, license plate ending in 738. Don't get in any other vehicle." "Kael." He'd already hung up. Lena paid for her coffee, left a tip she couldn't afford, and waited outside under the diner's awning. The SUV arrived in 18 minutes. Victor was driving, his face carved from stone. There was blood on his collar. Lena got in. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before she couldn't stand it anymore. Who did we lose? Two of the tech team, young kid named David who'd been with us for 6 months, and Marcus. The world tilted. Marcus Chen? He stayed to cover the evacuation, drew fire while we got the server secured. Victor's voice was completely empty. He was dead before the medics could reach him. Lena thought about Marcus at the fundraiser, taking champagne from her tray, his eyes asking if she was okay. Marcus, who'd briefed her, who'd been positioned as backup, who'd had a day job as a CEO and a night job keeping Kale alive. "I'm sorry," she said. "Yeah." Victor took a corner too fast. "We all are." They drove to a different safe house, this one above ground, an apartment building in a neighborhood struggling between gentrification and decay. 4th floor, corner unit, windows facing 2 different streets. Inside, the space was crowded. Rachel was at a laptop, her face gray with exhaustion. 3 other people Lena recognized from the operations center were working at makeshift stations. Medical supplies were spread across the kitchen table, and someone Lena didn't know was being treated for a shoulder wound. Kyle was on the phone in the bedroom, visible through the open door. He looked up when Lena entered, nodded once, kept talking. "Don't care what the official story is. I want to know who authorized it and why they're pretending it was a gas explosion. No, Marcus is dead. Yes, I'm sure. I'll handle the family notification myself. Fine. 24 hours. He ended the call and walked out. Up close, Lena could see the damage. Bruises forming on his jaw. Blood on his shirt. Not his, she thought. Eyes red from smoke or exhaustion or grief. "Sit," he said. Lena sat. Kale poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle someone had left on the counter, handed her one. They both drank. "The attack was federal," he said, "but not official federal. A team that got authorization through back channels. Someone very high up wanted us gone." "Brennan?" "Brennan doesn't have that kind of reach. Neither does Vance. This came from someone with real power. Someone who stands to lose if we disrupt the waterfront development." Rachel looked up from her laptop. "I've got the authorization trail. Took some digging, but I found it. The team that hit us was contracted through a private security firm. The firm's CEO sits on the board of Meridian Solutions. And Meridian's largest investor is a shell company owned by..." She stopped. "You're not going to like this. Tell me." "Deputy Mayor Jennifer Costa." Silence fell like a hammer. "Costa," Kale repeated. "She was at the fundraiser. I saw her." "So did I," Lena said. "She was with a developer. They looked comfortable together." Rachel pulled up files. "Costa's been positioning herself to run for mayor next year. She needs money for the campaign. The waterfront development would generate massive tax revenue, which makes her look good. But only if it happens fast before the election. She can't afford delays." "So she tried to eliminate the delay." Kale's voice was ice. "How many people does she think she can kill before someone notices?" "As many as it takes, apparently. The official story on the warehouse is already out. Gas explosion, no casualties reported. The bodies were removed before the fire department arrived. As far as the city knows, nothing happened. Marcus has family. They'll ask questions. His sister's already been contacted, told he died in a car accident last night. Very tragic. There's even a police report." Lena felt sick. "They're just erasing him." "They're erasing all of us," Victor said from the doorway, "making it like we never existed. That's what power does when you threaten it." Kyle set his glass down carefully. "Then we make them remember we exist. Rachel, I need everything on Costa. Every meeting, every donor, every connection to the development consortium. I want to know what she eats for breakfast." "Already on it." "Victor, reach out to our contacts in the media. Quietly. I want reporters who can't be bought, if such things still exist. We're going to give them a story they can't ignore." "And if they try to kill us again before we can?" Victor asked. "They will try. So we move first, fast and public. They can't disappear us if everyone's watching." He looked at Lena. "I need you to do something dangerous." "More dangerous than what I've already done?" "Yes. I need you to go back to the Brennan estate. Lena stared at him. You're joking. Brennan's hosting a private dinner tomorrow night. Smaller guest list, more intimate. Costa will be there. I'd bet money on it. So will Vance. If we're right about the power structure, that dinner is where they'll discuss next steps. They'll have security everywhere after what happened. Which is why you're going in as exactly what you are. A server who worked the fundraiser, getting called back for a smaller event. Diane requested you specifically, remember? You want me to spy on them again. I want you to record them. Video, audio, everything. We need proof that Costa authorized the hit. Proof that connects her to Meridian. Proof that destroys her credibility before she can destroy us. Rachel pulled up schematics of the Brennan estate again. The dinner's in the private dining room. Smaller space, better acoustics. If you can get a camera positioned right, we'll get everything. Lena's head was spinning. How am I supposed to plant a camera without being noticed? You're not planting it, you're wearing it. Rachel held up something that looked like a button. Miniature camera, broadcasts directly to our receiver. You wear it on your uniform. Nobody looks at buttons. What about their security sweeps? This operates on a frequency they won't be scanning for. As long as you don't get too close to their active jamming equipment, you'll be fine. And if I do get too close? Then the signal cuts out and we get partial coverage. But that's better than nothing. Kyle leaned forward. I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. If they catch you, I can't protect you. They'll disappear you like they disappeared Marcus. But if you pull this off, we end this. We expose Costa, destroy the development consortium, and make sure what happened to Marcus means something. Lena looked at the button camera in Rachel's hand, looked at the exhausted, grieving faces around the room, thought about Marcus making jokes at the fundraiser, about Victor pushing her into the tunnel while staying behind to fight, about Kyle offering her a choice that had led here, to this moment where she could run or she could finish what she'd started. Okay, she said, I'll do it. The next 24 hours were preparation. Rachel drilled Lena on the camera operation until she could activate it without looking. Victor coached her on what to do if security confronted her. Kale reviewed every piece of intelligence they had on who might be at the dinner. Costa will be there, he said, pointing at photos. Vance, Brennan, probably 3 or 4 others from the consortium board. They'll feel safe in Brennan's private dining room, safe enough to talk openly. What specifically am I listening for? Authorization. We need Costa saying she approved the warehouse hit, or something close enough that we can prove intent. We need Vance discussing financing. We need Brennan coordinating the political pressure. Ideally, we need all 3 together, discussing the plan. And if they don't discuss it, then we get what we can and find another angle. But I think they will. They think they won. They think we're scattered and broken. People get careless when they think they've won. The next evening, Lena put on her server uniform for what she promised herself was the last time. Rachel helped her attach the button camera, testing the feed until the image came through clear. Remember, Rachel said, don't look directly at anyone you're recording. The camera follows your chest angle, not your eyes. Keep your body oriented toward the conversation. How will I know if it's working? You won't. Just trust that we're receiving. Victor drove her to the estate, stopping 3 blocks away. You don't have to do this, he said. Yeah, I do. Marcus would tell you to run. He'd say one person's not worth the risk. Marcus stayed behind to cover the evacuation. He didn't run. Victor smiled sadly. No, he didn't. He handed her a small device. Panic button. If things go wrong, press it. We'll come for you. Even if it compromises the operation? Especially then. Kale's orders. Lena took the device, slipped it into her pocket next to the camera controls. She walked the last 3 blocks in the rain, showed her credentials at the service entrance, found Diane in the kitchen. Emma, Diane said, looking pleased. Good. I specifically requested you. Mrs. Brennan liked your work at the fundraiser. Happy to be back. The kitchen was smaller tonight, just 2 other servers and a chef. Intimate dinner meant minimal staff, which meant fewer places to hide. The private dining room was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the gardens. Lena helped set the table, arrange flowers, prep the serving stations. Every movement felt exposed. The camera button on her uniform felt huge, obvious, like everyone could see it. Nobody looked twice. Guests arrived at 7. Lena recognized them immediately. Costa, looking confident and powerful in a navy suit. Vance, silver-haired and impatient. Brennan, playing hostess with practiced grace. 3 others Lena didn't recognize, but Rachel would. All of them settling around the dining table like old friends. Lena served the first course, stayed in the room, positioned by the serving station, her body angled toward the table. The camera was recording, she hoped. Conversation started with pleasantries. The weather, the fundraiser, some gallery opening Costa had attended. Nothing useful. Then Vance said, "We should discuss the warehouse situation." Everyone went quiet. "Perhaps not in front of staff," Brennan said carefully. "They're not listening." Vance gestured dismissively at Lena. "They never are." Lena kept her face neutral, her hand steady as she refilled water glasses. Costa leaned back in her chair. "The warehouse problem has been resolved. The team I authorized completed their objective. Draven's operations center is destroyed. His key people are scattered. The resistance is broken." "You're certain?" one of the other men asked. "I had confirmation this morning. 3 confirmed casualties on Draven's side, including his second-in-command. The rest fled. Without their central infrastructure, they can't coordinate any effective response to the rezoning." Lena's hands were shaking. She set the water pitcher down carefully, picked up a wine bottle instead. "The timeline?" Vance asked. 8 weeks, as discussed. The city council votes on the rezoning next month. I have the necessary support. Once that passes, Draven's waterfront properties become legally unusable for his current operations. He'll have to sell or lose everything. And if he doesn't sell, then we proceed with acquisition through other means. But I suspect he will. Men like Draven understand math. When the equation stops working, they fold. Brennan raised her glass. To progress, then, and to removing obstacles efficiently. They drank. Lena served the next course, her mind screaming. She had it. Authorization, confirmation, intent. Everything KL needed. Costa turned to Brennan. "The private security firm you recommended performed excellently. I want to use them again if any other complications arise." Of course, they understand discretion. Crucial, given the sensitivities. The mayor can't know about the warehouse operation. He's too nervous about his legacy. But what he doesn't know won't hurt him. More laughter around the table. Lena's pocket felt heavy with the panic button. She could press it now, could end this. But they were still talking, still giving her information. "What about the media?" one of the other board members asked. "Any risk of exposure?" "None," Costa said confidently. "The official story is contained. Gas explosion, no casualties, investigation pending. By the time anyone questions it, the rezoning will be complete and the development will be underway. Facts on the ground, as they say." "And Draven himself?" "In hiding, presumably. Without his infrastructure, he's just another criminal. No threat." Vance smiled. "Then we've won." "Not yet," Brennan corrected. "We've created the conditions for winning. The actual work begins now. 8 weeks of political pressure, legal maneuvering, and managing the board's nerves. But yes, the path is clear." They raised their glasses again. Lena finished serving, retreated to the hallway outside. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought they might hear it. She'd gotten everything, every word, on camera. Now she just had to get out. The rest of the dinner passed in slow torture. Lena served courses, cleared plates, smiled when required. The conversation drifted back to safe topics: investments, travel plan, restaurant recommendations. By 9:30, the dinner was ending. Guests were saying their goodbyes, calling for cars. Lena helped clean up, her movements automatic. Diane thanked her, said she'd call for future events. Lena walked out through the service entrance into cold rain. Victor's SUV was waiting 3 blocks away, exactly where it should be. She climbed in, and Victor drove without speaking. Back at the safe house, Rachel was waiting with her laptop ready. "Please tell me you got something," she said. Lena pulled out the camera button, handed it to Rachel. Rachel plugged it in, pulled up the video file. They watched in silence. Costa's voice, clear and incriminating. "The team I authorized completed their objective." Vance discussing timelines. Brennan toasting to removing obstacles. When it ended, Rachel looked at Kyle. "This is it," she said. "This buries them." Kyle watched the video again, his face unreadable. Then he picked up his phone. Send it to our media contacts, all of them, tonight. I want this on every news site by morning. They'll know it came from us, Victor said. Good. Let them know. Let them understand we don't disappear quietly. Rachel was already typing, sending files, making calls. Kale looked at Lena. You did it. You got everything we needed. What happens now? Now we watch the city remember we exist. By morning, the video was everywhere. Every news site, every social media platform, every political blog. Jennifer Costa authorizing an illegal hit. Catherine Brennan coordinating with developers to crush competition through violence. Richard Vance celebrating casualties like business victories. The city exploded. Costa held a press conference at noon denying everything. Called the video a deep fake, a political smear, a desperate attempt by criminals to avoid justice. But the technical analysis came back within hours. The video was real, unaltered, authentic. By evening, calls for Costa's resignation were coming from her own party. The mayor, who apparently really hadn't known about the warehouse hit, announced a full investigation. The FBI opened a case into the private security firm. Brennan's estate was raided the next morning. So was Vance's office. The development consortium collapsed within a week. Board members fled like rats from a sinking ship, issuing statements about being misled, claiming ignorance, throwing each other under any available bus. The waterfront rezoning vote was canceled indefinitely. Lena watched it all from the safe house, exhausted and numb. They're going to figure out who recorded that video eventually, she said to Kyle. Probably, but by then it won't matter. The damage is done. Costa's career is over. Brennan's reputation is destroyed. Vance is facing federal charges. He looked tired but satisfied. They came after us to remove an obstacle. Instead, they created a bigger one. Sometimes that's how you win. Did we win? Marcus is still dead. Yes, he is. Hill's voice was heavy. And that's on me. I brought him into this. I put him in the position where he had to make that choice. He made his own choice. We all do. But some choices cost more than others. They stood in silence, watching the news coverage play out. After a while, Kyle said, You should leave the city. Take the exit package I offered. Start over somewhere clean. Is that what you want? I want you safe. This life doesn't end, Lena. There will be other Costas, other Vances, other fights. If you stay, you'll be part of all of them. Lena thought about the Sapphire Room, about being invisible, safe, uninvolved, about watching the world from the margins while other people made choices that mattered. She thought about dropping the picture, whispering the warning, choosing to step into the fire. I'm staying, she said. Kyle looked at her for a long moment. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He smiled. The first genuine smile she'd seen from him since the warehouse attack. Then welcome to the war. It's messy and it never ends, but at least you'll know what you're fighting for. 3 weeks later, Lena stood in a different restaurant. Not underground this time. A small place in a neighborhood that was trying to decide what it wanted to be. She wasn't serving. She was meeting with a property owner who'd been approached by another development company. Someone who needed to understand what was really being offered, what the real cost would be. Someone who needed information Lena could provide. Victor was outside watching the street. Rachel was monitoring communications from the new operations center, smaller than the warehouse base, distributed across multiple locations to avoid presenting one target. Kale was negotiating with the city council, using the leverage Costa's scandal had given him, pushing for development that served the neighborhood, not just the developers. It was messy. It would never be finished. New players would emerge, new threats would develop. But for now, they were holding the line. Lena finished the meeting, shook hands, walked out into evening light. The rain had stopped. The city stretched out before her, full of people making choices, fighting battles, trying to survive in a world that ground down anyone who stayed small. She'd been invisible for so long, safe in her insignificance. Now she was visible, targeted, part of something bigger than herself. It was terrifying. It was purpose. She walked toward Victor's car, her reflection catching in a storefront window. New haircut, glasses, different clothes, same person underneath. But not the same. She'd chosen this. Chosen to drop the picture, to whisper the warning, to step into the fire. And she'd keep choosing it, every day, until the fire consumed her, or she learned to walk through it without burning. Either way, she was done being invisible. Either way, she was done watching from the margins. The car pulled away into traffic, into the city, into whatever came next. And Lena didn't look back.